David, on our planning day, our planning session page, we have this wonderful little segment which illustrates, well, the power of classification, which is, Ackoff's framework, which is one of the tools we can draw upon when working with organizations. Very briefly, why Ackoff? What did Russell Ackoff bring to the table?
Russell Ackoff is one of the original systems theory thinkers, and it's probably because of him that people now can deal with complexity with confidence rather than throwing their hands in the air or using really inefficient tools. He sat and thought deeply about how do I keep all the variables in mind and how do I deal with the difficult things, and did it with a smile. And I think that's, the fact that he did that in the 1970s and we're still using his ideas today is a good indication that he really brought sort of clarity and humanity to complex problems.
Now, his framework also brings a smile because it talks about puzzles, problems, and messes. What is the value of talking about this when in a discussion about planning?
The real advantage of classification is that we all agree what we're talking about. And if we can't agree what we're talking about, then we've got a deeper issue. And that is we don't fundamentally understand the thing in front of us well enough to all have a conversation yet. So we need to define it better before we can do anything. And his classification became very important because people often think they're dealing with a puzzle, something that can only be solved one way, or someone else in the room goes, no, no, it's a problem. It can be solved in a number of different ways. It just depends what we want to do. Or there'll be someone who throws their hands in the air and says, it's a mess. We can't do anything about it, which isn't true. They've just got overwhelmed. So it's a way of having common language to help people get on the same page so that they can already feel like they're making ground. Because rather than talking at each other, they're talking with each other.
Now, you touched on those definitions just briefly in passing. Let's just have a moment's reflection on each one. So, the puzzle, the definition that we have on the page is a puzzle's a structured challenge with a single definitive solution. All the necessary information is present, and the outcome is certain once it's solved.
Which is a lovely definition because it's all there. I like to say something a bit simpler, and that is, a puzzle, there's only one way to solve it, and everything you need is in front of you.
And that can happen in some organizations. There are going to be things that are simply puzzles.
Yeah, what I've noticed is over time that if something is a puzzle and it hasn't been solved, it's because it's a very bitter pill. So it's not a question they can't solve it, it's a question of why don't they want to solve it? Because the solution is clear if it's a puzzle.
Like keeping the staff room microwave clean.
Yeah, or putting milk back in the fridge if you finish the carton. Why is that so hard?
The next is problems, and the definition we have is a problem is a challenging situation with possible solutions, though finding the optimal path forward requires some analysis, some creativity, and some careful consideration of options.
The point with a problem is it can be solved. So it's worth making an effort and it's worth working together. But there's not just going to be one solution. And depending on level of creativity or the level of resources people are willing to bring to the table, there could end up being multiple solutions to a problem. And it becomes more a question of evaluating which solution someone wants to apply. Because do we want the simple solution? Do we want the effective but takes more time solution? Do we, like the solution that means we don't get a future problem because in a sense we've future-proofed the situation as we resolve the problem we've got? Depending on what people want to achieve, how much they want to invest, you can get very different solutions to a problem. And also you can get people arguing over should we do it small and elegant or big and comprehensive? But at least they can agree that the problem can be solved, and it's only a question of how do we want to solve it, not can it be solved.
So, like if you're running a hardware store and you sell timber that you can cut to lengths and you're having a problem with too many odds and sods left over, that is waste, there would be different ways of solving that problem, which might be specifying all lengths have to be cut within certain multiples so that we've guaranteed against this. Of course, that's not always consumer friendly, or there could be a certain rule of thumb that you're only going to take cuttings from pieces of timber that leaves a serviceable amount of leftover. And that's just two of the many different ways it could be approached.
Precisely. They are really good ways to get to the essence of we can solve it in a number of ways. Which one fits our broader context? Which one fits our needs most effectively?
And then it brings us to messes. The definition we have is a mess is a system of interconnected challenges that lack clear boundaries, involve multiple stakeholders, and require ongoing management rather than single solutions. Sounds like a nightmare.
That is, I think, why he chose the word mess. But what I really like about the way Ackoff talks about and writes about a mess is it's not too much. It's just don't try and fix the whole thing at once. Within a mess, there are going to be multiple problems. There might even be some puzzles. And some of them you can address quite quickly with small amounts of resources. And in doing so, you will improve your situation, but you will also change the nature of the mess. And the most important thing to remember with a mess is you can always improve the situation. You can always solve a puzzle, solve a problem, and make the situation you're dealing with better. But in doing so, you change the mess. So if you identify something as a mess, you have to decide what you want to improve, but also become willing to keep looking at the mess to make sure it doesn't get out of control in future. Because a mess is always going to evolve and change every time you interact with it.
And I think the value of that label of mess, the value it brings to the table, is resetting our expectations that this is not going to be solved in one fell swoop, that it's okay that it's going to take quite a number of passes and it can be incrementally improved along the way. Don't lose hope, don't become disillusioned, but nut out the various things that can be tackled, some now, some a little bit later, some we might not even be aware of until we've done the first raft of changes. Is that, you think, the wisdom of the mess label, the benefit it brings? It just says, hey, it is going to be complex and that's okay.
Exactly. Always remembering that a mess can be managed, but don't kid yourself that it can be fixed. You just keep managing it, and you can get a long way ahead of the mess. You can get to the point where the mess is very contained, and you're going back and revisiting so often that it's never worse, it's just different. But that's just part of doing whatever you do. If you've got a mess in your world, then you just manage that mess.
Mm. And I just had a vision of all the memes that get shared, particularly on LinkedIn, about disillusioned staff or people complaining and grumbling about management or owners. And I wonder if at the heart of some of this, at least, is they're mired in a mess. And some people are frustrated that it can't just be fixed, and others are overwhelmed. And that if this planning session, this approach could actually lift the veils over everyone's eyes, they see it, then maybe we're a little bit kinder to the boss or the manager who doesn't have that one silver bullet to solve the problem. And at the same time, management might understand everyone's feeling a bit stressed by this. What can we do to chunk this down to make it bite-sized so we can all feel engaged and feel like there's something productive happening towards a goal?
That is exactly where we're trying to go. It's about getting to the point where everyone can acknowledge we're dealing with a mess, but we can deal with problems that are components of the mess one at a time. We're still winning, we're still getting better. We're just acknowledging it is not utterly solvable now or in the future.
And here's a puzzle to finish on. I never thought I'd find the day when I was praying for a problem.